We play video games quite a bit. Shout out to Apex Legends, Xbox Live. Hit me up, X Evan X Edge X. I made it when I was 15.
X Evan X Edge X.
Straight edge as fuck. Still 12 years.
You ready to go?
Sure. Let's
cool.
do it.
Well, thank you for tuning in. This is the Scoped Exposure podcast. I'm super excited to be sitting down with the Nova Scotian of Calgary hardcore, Evan. How about you say hey to the people
What's
at home?
up, everybody? It's Evan here. Just hanging.
Yeah, and just to kind of give an intro, so Evan is, I'm sure a lot of the people who are either listening know you, but for those who might not know who you are, can you just kind of give an intro of how, I guess, people would know you best in Calgary?
Oh, man. Okay.
Because you're not essentially affiliated with a specific band at the moment.
No, I haven't, no bands in Calgary yet. Been working on that for a bit, but yeah, I guess people would know me as the guy that moved here from Ottawa. Yeah, I moved here in 2015, May long weekend. I previously had a stint out here before where I lived in Edmonton for 6 months in 2013, I want to say.
Yeah.
I was 19, turning 20 at the time. Basically, I was living in Ottawa and super involved in the Ottawa hardcore scene. I played in a bunch of bands out there, like basically was like, you know, like one of the key members of that scene for a few years. I moved there in 2009, but yeah, basically I moved to Calgary in 2015 after a stint living in Edmonton in 2013. I moved out here to work on the oil rigs and kind of save up enough money to go to firefighting school down in Texas. So I ended up out in Edmonton and, you know, I was 19, 20 at the time, super involved in the Ottawa scene. And when I moved to Edmonton, I was basically like straight onto the Edmonton hardcore Facebook group, and I was just like, hey everybody, like my name's Evan, like I'm from Ottawa.
Yeah, you were eager to hit the ground.
Oh yeah, of course, because like I worked a construction job at first, like 6 days a week, 13-hour days. Like I had no time to myself. I had no friends. I worked with a bunch of, am I allowed to swear?
Yeah.
I worked with a bunch of fucking assholes and just like cokeheads and stuff, and I hated every second of it. So I wanted to hang out with people on my day off that were kind of, you know,
like-minded.
Like-minded, had similar viewpoints as me, and yeah, I posted on this Edmonton hardcore page, basically being like, you know, hey, does anybody want to hang out with me? I just moved here from Ottawa. Like I play in these bands in Ottawa, and you know, if anyone wants to hang out, let's meet up, because I'm new around here. If someone did that in Ottawa on the Ottawa hardcore page, at that time, you would have had like 30 people messaging him, like, or her, being like, what's up, like come on over, like all this shit, and not a single person messaged me. And I was like, damn, like at the time I could say like Edmonton sucks. But no, Evan Shaw was the first guy to reach out to me. He's like, hey man, like, you know, I live in Calgary, like this isn't Edmonton, but like there's a show at the Skate Shack in like 2 weeks. I think Withdrawal, Burn Your World played. I can't remember the openers, but there's one of the ones that Jay and Braden played. I can't remember the name of that one. It's one of the big Calgary ones. But,
right. So I just want to pull it back a little bit, because there's a lot to unpack there. And
yeah,
that story you shared when you were filling in on vocals for Inclination, which I do want to get to, because I feel like there's some behind the scenes there. But
sure.
Let's like pull it all the way back to when you were growing up in Nova Scotia.
Oh man.
Because
Okay.
that's on an opposite side of the world from here.
Yeah, so this gets people kind of confused, because everyone goes, oh, Evan's from Nova Scotia, Evan's from Ottawa, oh, but he lives in Calgary. So yeah, I've lived all over.
So you grew up in Nova Scotia?
Yeah, so I'm from a little town called Antigonish, Nova Scotia, population 4,000.
Wow.
I grew up
super small.
Yeah, and I grew up like 15 kilometers outside of it. I was a county kid, like I like rural, like super rural, like country life. I did, like my closest neighbor was, you know, half a kilometer away. Like
right.
We grew up by the ocean, super East Coast. But okay, so yeah, when I was 9 years old, my mom basically was like, you know, like Nova Scotia, not a lot of people out here in Western Canada get it, but like the eastern part of Canada is like ultra poor. And like it doesn't seem that bad because like the cost of living isn't as bad out there, but like people don't make money. Like it's pretty tough, which is why you see so many Maritimers out here working in the oil patches and stuff in Alberta. Basically, my mom was like, you know what, like I want to take a crack at the American dream. We're gonna move to the States. I'm gonna like she was a laser hair removalist, so she had her own business, and this is like 2001, 2002. So at the time, she was like really ahead of the curve and actually like doing really well with it, but there's only so much you can do with that in a small town in Eastern Canada. So we ended up moving to Massachusetts, moved to a place called Cape Cod, if you're unfamiliar with that. It's basically an hour and 20 minutes south of Boston. Yeah. And
that must have been just like across the border. So it wasn't like
so
huge
like
continental move or anything like that.
Yeah, it's relatively close, and I think why she ultimately picked Cape Cod is like when she was young, she had vacation down there a few times with her family.
So she was familiar.
She was, yeah. So like the flight from Boston to Halifax is like 40 minutes. If you look at it geographically, you kind of just like hook the ocean, but the drive, you have to like loop up through New Brunswick and come in. So the drive's like 12 hours, but the flight's like 40 minutes. Wow. Like it's super short. Yeah. But yeah, we moved there in 2002. My mom got an 8-year working visa because she owned a company, and I was 9 years old when we moved to America, and basically getting into hardcore was like a funny thing because like I absolutely got into hardcore when I lived in America, and at the time, like the early 2000s, mid 2000s, Massachusetts, like the Northeast, is like a hotbed. Like
for sure,
you name any band from that area, people know them. Like the local bands from that area that I like got me into hardcore are some of the biggest bands in the world. But like backtracking a bit, like I got into bands like Nirvana was like a big one for me. I liked like a lot of those like early NHL games, like that had like some of the hard rock music on it, like even like the early Tony Hawk games. I think like a lot of people can kind of like
Tony Hawk Pro Skater 3,
all
NHL
that
hits
shit,
2003. Those
Dead
are
Kennedys
big ones.
are on those, like all those like all the punk bands and stuff, like Good Riddance and like Black Flag and all that. And I ended up like kind of getting into like bands like Nirvana and kind of grungier stuff myself, and then that kind of slowly transitioned into heavier music because at the time, like my mom had this like it was like on demand. I don't know if you ever. It's like an American thing, I think. Okay. But basically, it's like
there might be a couple Americans who are listening, so they might know.
Yeah, it's kind of like anything out here where you can like watch music videos. But this is like 2005 maybe at the time. And
so revolutionary at the time.
Oh man, what it was like my brother and I, like shout out to my brother Andrew. He's 4 years younger than me, so at the time he would have been like 8 years old. I was like 12. And we're searching like through the music video section, and just like mom's gone grocery shopping, and we're just fucking around in the living room with our hockey sticks and like two Canadian kids. And
you'll never take that away from me.
That's right. Yeah. And this music video for a band called Slipknot came up, right? And I think it was Duality was the music video, I believe.
Right. Yeah.
Put it on. Never heard of this band before. I'm like 12 fucking years old. My brother's 8, right? And we got the hockey sticks, and we'd just been rocking out all afternoon. And this music video comes on, and we're just like, what the fuck is this? Like, just terrified. Like, there was nothing enjoyable about it, but we sat there, and we just kind of were memorized and like watched this whole video. Yeah. And by the end of it, we were like, holy fuck, like kind of scared, but also like, let's watch it again. Yeah. And now we're like halfway through the song, like air guitaring with the hockey sticks, like jumping off the fucking couches and shit. And I remember seeing my mom's like minivan pulling up into the driveway, and it was just panic. The hockey sticks go flying,
turn it off.
Shutting it off, like exit, like TV's off. We're running out like the house because our mom was like super not into that kind of music, and right. Like a mom's mom loves U2, loves Coldplay, that kind of stuff. And, then the next time she left, we put it on again, and then there was bands like Korn and Slipknot, and then we got into like Limp Bizkit, and I remember owning like the first Linkin Park CDs and stuff, and those were all like super heavy bands at the time for being like a young kid, right? Yeah. And those were kind of some of the bands that kind of got my foot into the door to like heavier music. Mm-hmm. And like we're from Nova Scotia, and like my mom's like super proud like Scottish heritage, and we would have been about like 12 or 13, and my mom was like, you know what, boys, like we're gonna preserve like the culture, like you're gonna take bagpipe lessons, right?
You know how to play bagpipes?
I wouldn't say I know how to play the bagpipes.
Wow, that's
so
crazy.
We did it for about 6 months. We like did the Chanter lessons on the bagpipes, and my little sister, shout out Brielle, was on the harp, and basically my brother and I are like listening to Nirvana and Linkin Park. We're like, this is stupid. Like, in hindsight, it would have been cool to say like I know how to play the bagpipes. I don't know how to play the bagpipes. Hey, some people hate it. I love that instrument. But,
I love that. Yeah.
Yeah, basically, my brother and I were like, this is stupid, like, whatever. My sister actually stuck with the harp, still plays to this day, an amazing harpist, such a cool instrument. But my brother ended up getting into the drums, and I got a bass guitar the next Christmas, and that kind of, shot it forward a bit. And
yeah, because you guys were the duo to kind of jam together and just make
we
noise.
were, but like at the time, like I'm in middle school, right? I'm in grade 8, I think at the time, or grade 7, grade 8. And my brother's like 4 years younger than me, and that's like quite a huge age gap, like at that age. So
sure.
I ended up like meeting some kids in school, and you know, at the time I was wearing like skate shoes, like the same fucking. I had like this zip up like Volcom hoodie I wore every day, but it was black, and that was cool, and that's all I gave it. I got my ear pierced, I had a little skull, my hair had the big swoop. I looked the part.
Yeah.
And I ended up meeting this kid. His name was Mario Gonçalves and Philippe DeWart. Shout out to the boys. I don't know if they're watching this.
Mario Gonzalez sounds like a movie character.
So like where I grew up, like there was 2 huge ethnic populations. If you weren't just like, you know, like a normal Caucasian guy, you were Irish. Like there was a massive Irish population. The second largest was Brazilian. Like, we had a massive Brazilian population where I lived. And Mario and Philippe were both like parents, like fresh off the boat, like from Brazil.
Yeah.
And like anytime you go over, it was just chaos, like people just screaming in Portuguese, and I loved it. And I ended up becoming best friends with these guys, and they were both like kind of rocker dudes, right? And especially like Philippe and I were like neighbors, so we were like best friends at the time. But Mario, he was like a little bit like more cool, right? And he came from a different school, and when the middle schools merged, and he had this black hoodie, and I thought it was so like it had like this hatchet on it, and the hatchet had like blood on it. And I was like, wow, like, what is that? And he's like, oh, it's a band. And I go up to read it, and the band was called As I Lay Dying. And I was like, dude, you gotta like, what is this? And he put it on, and I thought Slipknot was like the fucking heaviest band in the world. And he showed me this like kind of introduction into metalcore, and it just like blew my mind. And like that was overnight for me. I got into like all those like big metalcore bands at the time, like, you know, like As I Lay Dying and like Darkest Hour and fucking Bring Me the Horizon, like whatever. Like I had a really big like metalcore phase, like ages like 14 through 15. But like we kind of started a band, and like it went from like a middle school rock band quickly into like a pretty heavy like metalcore band.
Sure.
And that was like my first like real band. We were called His Name Shall Fall. You can look that up on YouTube. Like I'm like 15 playing at the Worcester Palladium.
I can't wait to watch this.
Just like losing my mind, like playing in front of like 1,000 people. That was like our biggest show.
1,000 people?
Yeah, we played this thing at this big venue. So Massachusetts is kind of like a hub for heavy music, but there's a city called Worcester. So like everybody like knows Boston and stuff, but Worcester's like the second largest city in Massachusetts, and it has like at the time was like the biggest venue for all the big metalcore, big hardcore shows. And if you've ever seen the Hatebreed I Will Be Heard music video, it's shot at the Worcester Palladium. So it's like a massive like 3,000 cap venue, like it's huge. And they did this thing called like the I can't remember, but it was like something like exposure like show or something. So they took 40 bands from around New England, and you were like hand selected, and then like, you know, in hindsight, like it's kind of stupid, but they had all these bands basically sell like 25 tickets each or something.
Right.
So now there's like a ton of people. Pay to play, exactly. We were like 15. We didn't give a shit. Like we could haul up a few friends to come up and see us play.
Sure.
And we ended up like, they like rank you and stuff like that, and the top 3 bands get like money, recording time or something like that. And I think we came in 4th out of like the 40 bands playing. And like we had a really good reaction. Like people loved it. And at the time we felt like rock stars, but the metalcore thing kind of fizzled out for me because I ended up like meeting hardcore kids when I was like 15, and at the time I had been through some like pretty rough stuff. Like my dad kind of like exited the picture due to like alcoholism. I had lost like a really good friend of mine. I was playing hockey at the time. I would have been 14, and I had a friend that was killed by a drunk driver, and basically like left on the road, like side of the road to die. I was supposed to be there, like
Jeez.
yeah, it was like a whole thing. And then like the next year my dad leaves, and I found out like my dad's like a massive like closeted like alcoholics. And so like I ended up meeting these kids that like were straight edge, and I was like, whoa, like at the time like a lot of people talk shit about straight edge and like, oh, like the straight edge kids are assholes or whatever, but like ended up like hearing some of their stories, and I was like, damn, like we're not that different. Like
Right.
There's other people that feel the same way as I do. Like at the time too, like getting into high school, like it was just so common to drink and like party, and like especially like where I grew up, like everybody did it. And now there's a massive heroin problem there, like huge. Like there's like documentaries about this like on Crave TV and stuff. Heroin, USA, Cape Cod, like that's like where I grew up. And
wow. And that's like
so rough.
Yeah, and it's especially with that like music genre as well. It's like, it's normal to go to the show Smashed and then play Smashed and,
right.
and all those
yeah,
kind of
and that was kind of normal in like the metal scene, and I kind of was never really about it. I did drink and I did smoke a little bit like before I was about 15, and then ended up like bumping into some straight edge kids, and they were like, hey, like we're going up to a show in Boston, and all these kids are like 19, 20, like they're all like super tattooed. I'd seen them at like local shows before, and like they just like beat the shit out of everybody, and I was like, whoa, like these kids are scary. They mosh super hard. Like I'm just like this kid with braces, like side swoop hair, basically a scene kid, like no idea what's going on. And they invited me up to this show, and I think it was either Boston or Worcester. And a big thing at the time too, in the like the mid to late 2000s in that area, is the bills were like huge. There would always be like 1,000 people there, because it was just people from like all over these different towns across New England coming to the big show in like Worcester. And the bands playing were like metalcore and hardcore. So you'd have like these like massive, like you'd be like the Acacia Strain playing with like Half Heart and Shipwrecked and like Since the Flood and like, I don't know, like Despised Icon. So like,
wow.
like massive crowds of people, but also like metalcore kids, hardcore kids.
Yeah.
Whatever. And I remember very clearly this show was like on a Wednesday night, and I was like, guys, like it's like an hour and a half drive. I was like, I can't, my mom's not gonna let me.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, fuck it, I'll ask. Like go up to my mom, I'm like, Mom, like there's a show like tonight, like, or tomorrow night. I think I asked her in advance, and I was like, do you mind if I go up?
You weren't
like,
that reckless.
Yeah, like I was like
leave now?
I'm like a well-behaved kid, right? And like I'm
Right.
15 at the time, and all these kids are like 20 and stuff, and it's like a Wednesday night. And I was like, can I go to the show like with like the guys? And she's like, absolutely fucking not. It's a school night. Do your homework, all this shit. And I was like, fuck, okay. So the next day comes, and the boys are like, you coming or what? And I was like, yeah, fuck it, I'm coming. So I was like, Mom, I'm going over to Philippe's house. I'll be back at like 10 o'clock tonight. Don't stay up. She stayed up. So I go.
Spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert. So I go up to Worcester with these guys, and I'm the oldest in my family, and as a kid growing up in Nova Scotia, like I remember very clearly like being like bullied like a ton. I wasn't like the biggest kid. Like I used to get and like I'm not talking like bully. Like I used to get like the shit kicked out of me like in school, in elementary school in Antigonish, and like loogies hawked in my face, like smashed into like the playground fence. Like I'm like seriously like got beat up a lot, and like didn't have anybody older because I was always like helping out my friends and stuff. Mm-hmm. And went to the show in Worcester with all these scary tattooed straight edge kids whom I thought were like the coolest fucking kids in the world. They're all like 5 years older than me. Mm-hmm. Opening band comes on, right? And like I think like like the Acacia Strain, like Bring Me the Horizon was like headlining, but then there was like Shipwreck and like Since the Flood. So like these are like some big like bands from that area. And the opening band comes on, it is a massive horseshoe. There's like probably already a few hundred people there, huge show. Nobody's moshing. But I'm with like the scariest kids in the neighborhood, right? And I'm like, fuck it, I gotta prove myself, right? So I just start like, you gotta understand, like this room is huge, and I'm like moshing by myself basically. And
you had to swing your arm like
the opening
14
band,
times to get across.
Man, you could take like 20 steps and still not hit the other side of like the pit or whatever. Yeah. And I'm just like swinging like a madman. I'm trying to prove myself to these older guys. And out of nowhere, this dude comes flying up behind me and just like decks me, and I'm like face plant like hard. I didn't like some push musher dude. Like I didn't see him coming, and I'm just like doing my thing, and this dude just like boosts me right from behind. I like face plant into the fucking ground, and I turn around, and I'm literally not even on one foot yet, and one of the guys I'm with knocks this dude out like that.
Ugh.
Out cold. And I'm like, holy shit. Because, like, this dude just, like, flashbacks almost to, like, when I was a kid, right? And this dude just knocks him out, like, not even a question. Didn't even know me. I don't even think he knew my last name. Like, Adam Pont, shout out. Dude knocks him out just like that. And all my friends were, like, boys of the security guards, too. So, like, in any other city, like, maybe he would have got kicked out. But the guy that actually, like, decked me got kicked out. And I was like, holy shit. Like, for the first time in my life, someone had kind of stood up for me. And it was all these kids I already thought who were, like, cool as fuck, right?
Yeah.
And just, like, that. I was hooked immediately.
Yeah. So that, like, camaraderie in a way. Like,
oh, man. Like,
you know, having each other's backs.
It didn't matter that I was, like, the young kid in the group. Because, like, now in Calgary, like, I'm one of the older kids. But, like, I think, like, at the time, it was just perfect timing. I was going through a lot. I had just, like, you know, like, basically lost a dad, lost some friends, like, it was a rough time in my life. And then to get into the straight edge thing and be like, damn, like, there's other people that do this that are, like, my age that, like, don't care about the drinking and the drugs and all that. And I was like, this is awesome. Like, Boston straight edge, Cape Cod straight edge, like, at the time was, you know, pretty big. Well, Boston was massive. And you know, Adam stood up for me, and I stuck around the rest of the night. And, like, that show got out, man. Shows at that time too, like, where I grew up going, like, you got these crews from all over the place coming to shows. So, like, at these big ones, like, there'd be, like, 10 fights a night. Like, it was crazy, just brawls left and right. Like, it was just normal, and I was almost, like, attracted to the violence in a sense, and I just loved it. Like, in hindsight, like, looking back, like, 10 years later, 12 years later, you don't see that often. You don't see, like, if a fight happens at a show, it's like, whoa, there was a fight. But, like,
Right.
Going to shows in Boston, like, it was just a fucking normal thing. Like, every weekend we'd go to a show, and it was just a massive, like, brawls after brawls, and it was just normal, like, and I kind of liked it. In hindsight, you don't need to fight over that, but it was just the timing in the mid to late 2000s. And anyway, the show gets out in Worcester. It's like fucking 11:30. I'm the young guy in the car, and I'm like, my mom's freaking out. It's you know, I said I'd be home at 10. It's 11:30. We're an hour and a half away.
Yeah.
And one of the guys goes, so everybody want to go to Denny's? And I'm like, oh, fuck. I was like, yeah, sure. I'm not going to be like, no, guys, I got to go home.
Yeah.
So we go to Denny's. I end up getting home at like 2 in the morning. Sure enough, I walk in the front door, lights on. Mom's sitting there with the fucking newspaper, like, glasses at the edge of her nose, just like looks up, and she just goes, did you go to the city? I was like, yeah. She's like, okay, you're grounded for 2 months. And I was just like, holy fuck. I was on, like, house arrest for like 2 months, but it was absolutely worth it. Changed my life, got me into straight edge, got me into hardcore, and I pretty much after that, I ended up going to, like, every show ever with these guys. And
so that's something I want to kind of touch on, because I know that you have said in sometimes where, like, hardcore and straight edge are, like, very connected.
Absolutely.
And I think, like, I kind of wanted to bounce something off of you, because for me, like, I grew up in a household that was, like, you know, didn't, like, it was a religious household. So, like, my folks were okay with drinking, but, like, when you're of age to do so.
Right.
And for me, when I was growing up, like, my mom, like, she had a dad who was an alcoholic and, like, beat his wife, or my grandma. And so that, like, kind of turned me off to drinking. And I guess, like, for me, like, I didn't want to necessarily, like, plant a flag in the ground and be like, I'm straight edge. But it was almost easier to tell people I was straight edge versus, like, I just don't drink, because that was almost weirder. So I guess, like, I find it interesting that straight edge is, like, this thing. And, you know, obviously I'm not trying to be like, you need to speak for all of straight edge.
Oh, God.
Or whatever.
Hello.
Hey, everyone. But I'm just kind of curious. Like, it is that there is a weird mentality where it's like you either don't drink or don't have any substance crutches, if you will, or you are an animal and drink every weekend. And for me, like, I do drink, but I lean far more to, like, the straight edge side of things. Like, it's in the gray area. So
I think with the straight edge too, for me, it was more of like it was a time period, and just the timing, like I said, was impeccable. Like I said, like, my dad was out of the picture. I had lost a good friend, and this is all, like, in a 14-month period. And I got into hardcore all at the same time.
Yeah.
And now I'm, you know, getting more like knowledgeable and like learning about straight edge bands, and then I meet straight edge kids, and I was like, damn, like I guess this is one after another. And I remember one of the guys, like when I first claimed straight edge, like one of the older guys was like, you're never gonna fucking like stay straight edge, because like I went from like drinking every other weekend, like I was like 14, 15, like partying, like high school parties, middle school parties. At the time, kids were like super early into that where I grew up. Like I was smoking cigarettes at like 14 and drinking every other weekend. It was normal there, but you know, like someone's parents went out of town and we just like raided their liquor cabinet. That was it. Mm-hmm. And I remember one of the guys was like, oh yeah, you're never gonna still be straight edge, and like that kid is not straight edge anymore. And it's like, it's not like I stuck with it to be like, oh, like I told you so. But I think now too, you're seeing a lot, maybe like a lot less straight edge kids, and like a lot more people like yourself that are like a lot more moderate. But at the time, it wasn't moderate where I grew up. It was like one or the other.
Right.
And because I had such negative experiences with the other side, it was the other for me. Right. And like even now, like I know lots of people that aren't straight edge anymore, and it's not like I hold, you know, like grudges against those people like whatsoever. Like you do you. At the end of the day, it's like it's a personal choice, right? My brother was straight edge for like 5 or 6 years. Mm-hmm. He broke edge. I remember he was like super bummed to tell me about it. He's like, yeah, like smoked weed, and I'm like, yeah, it's all good. Like I don't care, man, because at the end of the day, it is a personal choice. And for me, like, I've been straight edge now 12 years. Like, what the fuck? Like, I'm getting old now.
Yeah, and you're probably, like, so deep into that where you're like, well, like, what's the point for me to
I remember, too, like, being, like, 16, 17, like, the first year or two that I was straight edge, being, like, people being like, oh, there's a party this weekend. And I was like, maybe, you know, like it had crossed my mind a couple times for sure. But the older I got, the more it just became second nature, and like I just stuck with it. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And the older I get, the more I see it too. Like you see kids that are like straight edge, like right off the bat, and they're like, I'm fucking straight edge, like fuck you, like, and I wasn't much different. And like, but you know, I don't judge at all. Like if someone drinks socially, and like my girlfriend, I love you, Elise. My girlfriend's a perfect example. You know, drinks socially, grew up in a family, like a European family, where they drank wine at the dinner table and stuff like that. And then, you know, she's not a fucking alcoholic. She doesn't struggle with anything. And a lot of people don't, but a lot of people do. And then, like you said, you came from a line, and man, my line of family, everybody. It wasn't just my dad. Like every uncle, every grandfather down the line. The writing was on the fucking wall for me. Yeah. And I just didn't. I said, fuck that. Like I'll remove myself from this equation. And
I think it's maybe just a self-awareness thing where like I've heard it from people where they've like chosen to be straight edge because they know if they have one drink, it's like game over for that night.
Yeah, some people just, or
they can't have liquor in their house because it will be gone.
It's one or the other, right? Like it's such an extreme thing, and I don't think it has to be. Like I'm not saying like every young kid that, you know, comes from a family of like alcoholics, or like you've had a friend that's been killed or OD'd or whatever. It's I'm not saying you have to be straight edge. Like I just think there's a lot, like at that age, you know, late teens and stuff, people are like a less strong-willed, I think, and for some people it is a little more difficult to say no, or to say like that, you know, I've had two, I'm feeling good, that's enough for me. At that age, it's like blackout or nothing. And for me, I just said I'm good, you know?
It kind of boils down to that. I think there was like a point where I was like, well, if I'm not straight edge, can I still wear like, you know, like a straight edge shirt? Because then, or like a vegan straight edge shirt. But then I think it still just opens up that conversation, and you're like, oh, are you vegan, or are you straight edge, or are you vegan straight edge, or whatever? And then it's like, oh no. And then you can have that hopefully positive conversation versus like, fuck you, and rip the shit.
I remember at the time too, like we would go to shows, and like you'd see straight edge kids like quite literally like knocking beers out of guys' hands and stuff, and all that. And at the time I thought it was fucking sick. And I mean, in hindsight it's a little annoying, but fuck man, like at the time too, like growing up in the Boston area, like hardline edge was a thing. You ever heard of that stuff?
No, I don't.
So hardline's basically like no drugs, fucking zero, no caffeine, no Tylenol.
Because that's always stuff. Like, okay, what does each X actually represent?
Where do we draw the line?
Right.
Oh yeah, and then the X is like abstaining from sex, and I think that was an interesting.
No promiscuous sex.
No promiscuous sex was a funny one, because
that was, sorry to cut you off, but that was I have to shout out. There's a band from back home in Winnipeg, and they had a crowd chant part in a song that was like, no, promiscuous sex.
Yeah, so
I totally forget the band, but if someone knows, drop it below.
I think where that came from, I'm not a straight edge philosopher. Don't take me too seriously on this, but I think at the time, mid to late 2000s hardcore had a massive surgence of Christian hardcore bands. People that are diehard Christian, especially like in America, in the Midwest and all that. And I had friends, like I knew people from that area that were super Christian growing up, and they lost their virginity when they decided they weren't super Christian anymore.
Yeah.
And, you know, being a metalcore kid or a hardcore kid listening to, I don't know, bands like Advent or Seventh Star, I mean, those bands are fucking awesome.
Yeah.
Seventh Star was sick, dude.
Yeah. I got to see Advent last year.
I never got to see any of them.
Yeah.
I wonder what that would have been like in modern.
It was, I think, I forget what their vocalist name is, but he's like, oh, I stretched my leg out because I was putting down like soil in my garden. So
fucking right. Midwest.
Like, yeah, you're very daddy.
I just think at the time for a lot of kids that were Christian and then maybe got into straight edge, whether they thought it was just, they were like, oh shit, like now I don't have to feel the pressure because like I'm a Christian kid and I shouldn't be doing this anyway.
Right.
But also we shouldn't be having sex.
Right.
And so every like kid that wasn't
also, it was
super,
like slowly
I think it was just like involved with like more of a religious side effect than just like, and it makes total sense, right?
Yeah.
Because I knew a lot of Christian kids at the time. I have, you know, I come from a Christian household, and even when I moved to Ottawa, some of my best friends were all super Christian, and I always kind of stayed away from the religious talks. I just, you know, because we were always kind of like, everybody in my group of friends were always like kind of on the same page when it comes to like politics and stuff.
Sure. If
you're American, side note, just fucking go vote for Bernie Sanders. If not,
yeah, do that.
We won't get into that.
Yeah.
Fuck, you guys are frustrating to watch from afar.
Yeah.
Anyway, but I have so many friends that were Christian growing up, and it came up one time, you know, like I had one of my friends truly say this to my face, like one of my best friends, being like, oh well, if you're not Christian, you know, like we can be friends, but like at the end of the day, like I think you're gonna go to hell. And like, you kind of have to take a step back and take that for granted. If someone like that isn't like the most religious person in the world, but like, damn, that's such a bummer, you know? If you like your best friend truly believes that or something like that, you have to be like, damn, like,
are you sure?
That's it. Like, that's it, just because of that one little thing.
Yeah.
It's not even if you were like a fellow Christian, but like say you had a Jewish friend or like whatever. Like religion's such a crazy thing, and so I never got into religious talks with people because like I didn't want to have that.
You didn't want to have that as a wall between
never
just having a friendship.
And it didn't matter to me if you were, you know, Jewish or whatever. It's like it didn't, just stay away from that conversation because like why ruin a good friendship over something if, you know. And now all these people aren't super religious anymore, and they're just like, man, like I was young, I was kind of a dickhead, like whatever. I was a
holier than thou mindset.
Yeah, so I think that's where the hardline promiscuous sex kind of took a turn from the religious side of stuff, and the kids that got in straight edge that were super religious, but not where I grew up. Everybody was like, you guys are stupid, fuck off. Like, I drink coffee now.
Yeah. I'm like, I don't understand. Like, I love coffee, and I feel like if I could only be straight edge and not have coffee, I'd be like, oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Non-X coffee, non-X.
Well, basically, I was super fortunate to live in a place where, at the time, hardcore was probably the biggest in the Boston scene.
Yeah.
Have Heart, Shipwreck. God, man, like local bands like Cruel Hand coming down from Portland. Like, oh, you ever heard of that band? Yeah, of course I have. Like, dude, the list goes on and on. Hammer Bros, like, Black My Heart was playing shows, and then like even the big metalcore bands like were massive, and you know, a lot of them still play to this day. But like I've made so many friends in America, and there's a lot of really good people down there. But
so what was the transition from going from being in the States to Ottawa? Yeah,
so I was 16. We had been there for 7 years, so we moved there in 2002 and 2009. Mm-hmm. 8 years, my mom got a working visa, so it would have been 2010, right?
Oh, okay.
2009, the American government contacted my mom and was like, hey, how you doing? Basically,
Why you're contacting
listen, you've been here 7 years. Next year, you either have to give up your Canadian citizenship and become American citizens, or you have to go back to Canada.
Right.
It's 2009. The housing market just collapsed in the United States, and we're at the forefront of it in a place. Cape Cod is a super tourist trap. So like if you go down any street in the winter, you got a house with some locals in it. Vacant house, vacant house, vacant house. And these aren't vacant. They're just, someone from New York that has just like summer houses for people.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Sorry, yeah. So like, someone from New York, someone from, northern LA. Vermont, fucking a lot of New England people, just in the area, Connecticut, Rhode Island, people that had summer homes would come to Cape Cod. If you've ever seen the Jaws movies, that's filmed in Cape Cod. It gives you a vibe. It's literally a fucking island, like beach.
Yeah.
It's what you do. Like people make, 80% of their yearly income in like 3 months there. And basically, housing market collapsed. People all of a sudden were scrambling to pay their mortgages and not going on vacation, and let alone getting their, back glazed or their upper lip glazed or something. So my mom's business ended up taking like a really sharp nosedive, and she sold the house, lost money on it, and like that. What was that movie with? That was about all that shit. Was it the Big Short? No. Yeah, The Big Short. Anyway, it's all about the housing market collapse, and that was actually super directly involved in our life. So 2009, housing market collapse, we moved back to Canada. So my mom went to college in Ottawa, had two of her best friends that grew up in that area, and government, capital city of Canada, recession-proof is the mindset here.
Oh, I see.
We moved to Ottawa.
So it's like the safe bet.
Safe bet.
And she's going back to school
after just losing like all this like money and stuff in America. She didn't go back to school, but just like took the friendship she had there, and like we had a little bit of family there, and Ottawa's a government city, recession proof. We're gonna go there. That's where we're holding up for the next few years. All good. So we moved to Ottawa when I was 16. I had already been straight edge for a little bit, into hardcore, and for the first time in my life, I'm living in a city. So like where I grew up in the Cape, like it's like villages and stuff, like one town after another. Yeah. And Antigonish is the smallest town ever. So I moved to a big city and I don't know anybody, like zero. So at the time, I'm on myspace.com. I literally find the like an Ottawa hardcore metal band or whatever. I can't even remember their name. And I go to the friends list and I just type in the letter X, okay?
Oh,
I'm looking for straight edge kids to hang out with in Ottawa.
And that was the thing, like straight edge people like
used to do like X,
nowadays
Evan X.
Yeah, and people were still doing that even in their Instagram handles. Or
for sure, I do it. I throw an X in the middle, but at the time, I was like, I want to make friends here that are like minded. Let's look at the letter X in the Ottawa scene. So I come across a guy named Joe Howe, okay?
Is this Joe X Howe?
It was at the time, it was X Brosif X. Shout out Joey Howe, fucking one of the best dudes from Ottawa. So you gotta understand, like when I was living in America, I had a good 2 years going to shows, getting into straight edge. But when I moved to Ottawa, I was kind of becoming of age in a city where the hardcore scene was at the time at a low. And I ended up making a ton of friends like right away. So I ended up messaging Joe Howe. We ended up hanging out and we had a jam the first day we ever hung out. He had a drum set, I had a bass. I wanted to sing in a hardcore band. He knew a guy that played bass, and I was like, well, then I'll just sing. That guy's name was Steve Nadeau, one of my other best friends. I'm going to go through the list here with some of the Ottawa kids.
I hope they're all watching.
Oh, they're fucking watching. Shout out Pretty Boy Crew. So Steve, Joe, and I are all jamming, and we're like, let's start a hardcore band, okay? Steve wasn't straight edge, so like we weren't going to do the straight edge route, but we just wanted to play loud music. Joe was a really good drummer. Steve was a good bass player. I was just getting on the mic for the first time, and we could not find a guitar player. So we said, fuck it, calling up my little brother. Shout out to Andrew. Andrew's 12 years old at this time. I'm 16, and Joe makes the move from drums to guitar, and we started a band called Think Twice. And Think Twice was around for a few years in the Ottawa scene, but... At the time, there was two other big bands. They were called Constraints and Substance. Okay. So Substance, Constraints, and Think Twice were kind of like your big three in Ottawa.
Think Twice was your very first band, though.
If you're not counting like the metalcore bands in the States that I kind of like play bass in. Think Twice was the first Ottawa band I played in. First band I sang in.
Yeah.
And we played a show. We recorded a demo on like MySpace or something, and then we played a show about a month later, and it was really cool because Ottawa was at a low at the time, and all the kids that had been around in Ottawa and had like been around for years or whatever, this band basically came out of thin air.
Right.
So my brother and I had just moved there the month before. Steve and Joe were going to shows but like weren't super active, and now like you've got this mosh metal band that's like playing fucking shows, and there's videos of it, and like people were just beating the shit out of each other. First show, like we had got a great reaction, and I kind of just like started screaming Ottawa hardcore, and it very quickly like I took that very seriously, and I was like, fuck it, like we're representing the fuck out of the city, because Ottawa just geographically is such an underdog city, situated between Toronto and Montreal, the two biggest cities in Canada.
Right.
We're 4 hours from Toronto, an hour and a half from Montreal. Any major tour comes through, guess where it's going? Toronto, and it's going to Montreal. It's not coming to Ottawa. So we kind of had to prove ourselves. And even just like everyday life, like a lot of the kids I was going to high school with, like, oh, the second I, get out of school, like I'm going to Toronto, I'm going to Vancouver, like I'm getting out of Ottawa.
Yeah.
And I was like, fuck
getting
you.
out of my town.
Yeah, I was like, fuck you, this place rules. Like I loved Ottawa, and like I loved all the friends I had there. And I was like, fuck you, we're gonna make this awesome. And then even just like with a hockey team, like you go to a Toronto, Ottawa, or like an Ottawa Montreal game, half the crowd is rooting for the opposite city. So I just found that super frustrating, because like I was super proud to like say I lived there, and like we very quickly coined, like we put like Ottawa hardcore on every fucking shirt we had, like the outline of Ontario with the star over where the city is on the map, and like we just repped the shit out of it.
Did you do a Senators knockoff?
We did not. We thought about it, but it's kind of hard to knock off that 3D Sens logo. It was pretty nasty at the time.
The very first time that, I don't think we talked at the fest, but the very first time I filmed the Calgary Fest here, when it was it had just come back from being 3 cities to southern Alberta.
Yeah.
I was like editing the videos. I'm like, who is this gorilla wearing this Senators?
Yeah.
And that was my first introduction to you. And then like more times when I came out for the fest and then saw you and then moved here and then actually like, oh, I'm Evan.
I think when it comes to moshing, you're kind of a product of your environment. So if you grow up in Western Canada, you're going to mosh like you're from Western Canada. I grew up going to shows in Massachusetts, one of the best scenes in the world. Also one of the most violent fucking places to go to shows.
Yeah.
Everybody there moshed way harder than me, and you kind of had to like... So when I moved to Ottawa, I brought that style there, and like people were like... people were already moshing hard in Ottawa. Like, shout out Adam Baker, Mitch Plunkett and shit. And, like, those guys were all whooping ass.
But when you were moshing, people were like, well...
Yeah, okay. I mean, I was like a kid still, but, I was still like 170 pounds. But I definitely... People were like, this guy's not from here.
Yeah.
and that style kind of stuck with me coming to Calgary. And people noticed it. And I'm a super nice guy.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, we played shows for a while. Think Twice. That ended up, I was in high school at the time. I ended up high school is such an important time period if you're into hardcore to get other people into hardcore.
Sure. Absolutely.
Man, I think at the time I ended up grabbing like 8 or 9 people from my school that still go to shows to this day. I would just see wearing a fucking skate tee.
Yeah.
Like at the time I was so passionate about hardcore. It was all I thought about, all I listened to. Everything. I couldn't wait for the next show. I couldn't wait for jam. It was just everything in my life at the time too. There was this kid walking around the halls, and I thought I saw him wearing like a straight edge shirt, right? And I was like, what the fuck? I was like, there's no way. Like I lived in Western Ottawa in like a suburb called Canada, and I was like, there's no way. Like there's a straight edge kid here, and he had a call to preserve straight edge shirt. And I was super proud also to like be like from Massachusetts. I had that have heart Boston straight edge like crew neck, right?
Right.
And we were at this pizza place one day during lunch. There's like this pizza spot by the school, and he sees me and he just goes like, "Nice shirt, man." And I was just like, "You straight edge?" And he's just like, "Yeah." And I was like, "What's up? I'm Evan." He's like, "What's up? I'm Andrew Narroway." So Andrew Narroway is like a staple in the Ottawa hardcore scene. He runs Walk a Mile Records.
Andrew.
Andrew Narroway, yeah. He's been
Narbar.
Yeah, Nairbear, that's right. Shout out Nairbear. One of my best friends. Like,
yeah.
Easily.
Solid dude.
One of the best guys. We met in high school, and basically he was a grade ahead of me because he was fucking homeschooled like a nerd. And even though like I think I'm older than him, I'm not sure, but he was graduating a year early. But he had the straight edge shirt on, and I basically was like, we're friends now. It didn't fucking matter.
For sure.
And basically Nair ended up like coming to shows all the time. He was at the First Thing Twice show, like all these guys, and the Ottawa scene was so small that everybody just kind of became friends like immediately, and we all knew each other. And over the next few years, like with Substance playing shows and Constraints and Think Twice, and then we would have bands from Montreal and bands from the States now coming up. And so like there was a few years there between 2009 and 2014, Ottawa like went from like a real low period to a really high period. And like we still like didn't have the same turnout as like Toronto or Montreal, just based on the fact that.
But you saw the growth.
Oh my God, huge. And I can honestly say that I was proud to be involved with that, and it was always a thing for us too, to really, like I said, really represent Ottawa. And basically, whenever a band came to town that wasn't from the city, so like if you were from Toronto, if you were from Montreal, or better yet, if you were from America coming up, we had a bunch of bands from kind of like the northeast sector that could make the trip, because like Philadelphia's a 7-hour drive from Ottawa, Boston's a 6-hour drive. Like they're much closer than it is out here in Western Canada, where these bands can actually make the trip, and it's not a big deal.
Right.
Those bands would come up. It didn't matter if we fucking liked the band or not. Okay, I'm saying it on record. It didn't matter if we thought that they were the sickest band in the world. Everybody learned the lyrics. Everybody knew when the mosh parts came, and when they played in Ottawa, we would beat the shit out of each other. And it got real violent, real fun, and these bands would leave being like, yo, the Ottawa date was way better than Toronto, and it was better than Montreal. And we would leave being like, that's a fucking victory for our city.
Yeah.
And then sure enough, they'd go back to the States, tell their friends, and now there was a few years where bands were coming to Ottawa all the time. And
that's so it's so like, it sounds cheesy to be like,
man, so important.
Yeah.
Kids, if you're listening,
that's
if
so
you're
tactical.
Young, if you're in high school still here in Calgary or like wherever, doesn't matter. Get people into hardcore. It changed my life. Like, and it's so corny to say that, but it really did. And it's so important to, if you don't care that like the band coming to town is like the best band in the world, it's not the most hype band. It doesn't matter if that band comes up here and has a great reaction. They're gonna go back to wherever the fuck they're from and be like, yo, Calgary, Ottawa was like the best show.
Yeah.
You gotta go there. And then for the next few years, I think 2013, 2014, well, it had been going on for a while, but Hardfest was like a big thing in that area. It had been like kind of a local like one-day event for a few years, and I think it kind of popped off around like, fuck, I'm going to misquote this. Like, shout out Phil Waugh, he put on fucking Hardfest, Lance Crowder, like all the guys, but like, I think we were on like 5, 6, 7, somewhere around that point, where it really like became like a big event where we had bands coming up from America, and for 2-3 years there it was like really good. It was really, really good. We had tons of bands like from the States, and basically all the biggest bands from Ontario, Quebec, and like the few American bands we could scrounge up for the Northeast would come up and play. And Hardfest was actually the first place that No Warning did their first like Canadian show back after playing in Europe or something for a bunch of money.
Yeah. But no, like to go back to what you said, just like being tactical of like showing bands a good time when they come through.
Man.
Like, cause I
it doesn't fucking matter if you like them or not.
Yeah. Well, I remember so Wild Rose 2019.
Yeah.
I was talking with the merch guy from CU Space Cowboy.
Okay.
And he was like, yeah, like, I think they had played like Winnipeg and Regina, and they're like, yeah, like those shows weren't, like, not to knock on those cities, but they're like, yeah, like
smaller
cities, like no one really got it, you know? And so they're like, yeah, like the agreement on this tour is like, if no one moshes, the merch guy has to mosh like as hard as possible the entire
That's
set.
just fucking code.
But you know, as soon as they started playing, like lots of people like you and you know, Cody and lots of the other people that get that, they're like, we need to show this band a good time, so they go back
like,
home. And
not to knock on some of those American bands that even played here, like Wild Rose, like sometimes like I can't even remember some of the names. Like there's bands that I would dance to that I've never even heard of. You know what I mean? Like okay, what was that band that came up not last year? Was it the band that came up from California or Arizona?
Reclaim.
Never heard of them. Great band. Mm-hmm. Had a blast. Yeah. That fucking band drove like 20 2 fucking hours to play in Calgary, Alberta
For 15 minutes.
for 15 fucking minutes as like an opening band. Dude, you got to respect that. Like, it doesn't, I didn't know who the fuck they were, but I heard that story like 10 minutes before they were going on, and I was like, I don't give a shit if this is like my favorite band in the world. I'm gonna fucking mosh. I'm gonna have a good time. I'm gonna dance. If they do a cover, I hope I know the fucking lyrics. I don't listen to a lot of older bands, but like,
but it is that thing where like
you gotta respect it, dude.
Yeah, but hardcore is also like very like not easy to anticipate, but things are structured in a way where it's like it's natural for this next thing to happen. And then it's like, this is probably going to go into a 2-step. And then it does, and you're like,
fuck it.
And then you can
get on the floor.
Yeah.
Have a good time. Smack a friend.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. Like, even that band like was blown away by their reaction. I remember talking to them. I was like, how was that? Because it was something that I used to do when I was younger, living in Ottawa. A band would come up and play our city. And I would go, hey, like, hope that was all right. And they're like, what are you talking about? That blew Toronto out of the water. Like, that was like a really good show, best Canadian show we've had. And we're just like, yes, would you come back? Sure enough, they come back and play Hardfest the next year. Like, and then have a way better reaction because they've already kind of established themselves in that city. Mm-hmm. And some of the bands coming back this year to play Wild Rose, I'm sure they're going to have a way better reaction than they even had last year. Like, bands have to tour, establish themselves. They come back to the city, the reaction's usually twice as good next time.
100%. So let's continue the progress. So you mentioned at the beginning of the pod on you eventually moved from Ottawa to Edmonton.
Yeah.
So just north of Calgary here.
Yeah.
And you were working on the oil fields at the time.
Yeah.
I think when you told the mini story with Inclination, which I still want to get to, but you had said you wanted to be your own man. Was it more just like coming from that like poor aspect of Canada and like, oh, I could actually make some money?
For sure. Like, I'm not painting a picture like I grew up in poverty. My mom did really well, but like, you know, single mom family, paying the mortgage, like all that kind of stuff. I was the oldest. Like, you know, my first year out of high school, I took a gap year. I was working full time at a Tim Hortons, and you know, I was paying my mom rent to live at home because like at the time things weren't awesome. And in hindsight, like I look back at that and there's like no qualms there or anything. Like I love my mom to death, but like it wasn't awesome. So I realized I wanted to get into firefighting and go to school for that, and you know the money wasn't really there to send me off to Texas for 4 months, and basically I was like, well, how can I make the most amount of money in the shortest amount of time? And I had a bunch of cousins from Cape Breton and from Nova Scotia that had gone out to Alberta and had been on the oil rigs for a while, and yeah, I came out and did that. I did that for a few months. Hard job, paid well. I ended up going to Texas for 4 months, met a bunch of people in Texas, and yeah, then I came back to Ottawa for 2 more years. A lot of people kind of forget that I actually went back to Ottawa for another 2 years. Mm-hmm. Played in some more bands. I played in a band called Warnerve. We were a straight edge, like kind of thrashy band.
Okay, cool.
So take like a power trip influence and make it straight edge. So like that was actually, we'll backtrack a little bit. Warnerve was like probably one of my favorite bands I played in because at the time we had played in this other band called Raw Style, and Raw Style was like another straight edge band, but we kind of played that like youth
Raw
group vibe.
Style.
Yeah,
like RAW space
Raw
style.
fucking style. Yeah,
that's fucking sick.
we played like the most generic like youth crew shit, but like people loved it, and yeah, we had good reactions. But also like Ottawa kind of vibed more with the heavier side of hardcore. So like we didn't have like the craziest shows, but we had fun. Mitch Plunkett, Andrew Kramer. But then like our buddy Nairbear, Andrew Naraway, Walk a Mile, was basically not in any bands but super involved. Was at every show, supported all the boys, was at our practices, and was at a Raw Style practice one day. And basically we were like, fuck it, you want to start a band where Naraway's singing? We just wanted to get him on a microphone. Right. Because he's a smart guy, and and he's just super into hardcore. And we were like, let's just start another fucking band. That's how it was in Ottawa too. We started this band one time called Bomb Squad, and Bomb Squad was a joke band. And at the time, Minority Unit was super big, so like we just like wrote a fucking demo in an afternoon, recorded it. This is actually legendary shit. You can YouTube this. Dave Birch used to film all the shows similar to how you do in Ottawa back in the day. And Bomb Squad met the noon of like a Friday night, whatever. We met like 3 in the afternoon, wrote a demo, recorded it that night. Horrible demo. we played a show the next fucking day, had the best reaction of the show. We all came on stage, ripped our shirts off, and played this like jokey fucking shit.
Wait to watch that.
It was the whole set's like 5 minutes. It's a fucking shit show. But Warner ended up starting because we just wanted Andrew Naraway on a mic, so Raw Style's members actually just kind of shifted. Mitch was singing and Raw Style became the drummer of Warner. Joey was drumming and Raw Style became the guitar player of Warner. I played bass and Kramer got kicked and Naraway was on the mic. And then, yeah, we played this. I was in Warner, Raw Style. I think twice ended up becoming Badlands, which is a band I sang in too for a couple more years.
I gotcha. Yeah.
And it was same members, everything just shifted around. And we just didn't give a shit. Like, there was like 10 guys playing in like 4 different bands. And it was like all of our friends, and we just like, we didn't give a fuck. And every band sounded wildly different too. It wasn't like, the boys are just shifting the members around a little. This band,
or like you read a riff,
so
you're
different.
like, oh, I don't know if it should be this band or this band.
Nah, like it was like, you know, like Warner was kind of like the thrashy thing. Raw Style was like the youth crew band. Badlands was like this heavy moshy band that I sang in, and we were all over the fucking place. It was a good time, but
yeah. So you came back to Ottawa for 2 years.
Kind of rocked out with those bands, and then basically shit got a little weird. Basically, I was in a long-term relationship of 1.5 years. I had just come back from firefighting school and was like uber confident in myself, tried out for Ottawa Fire, got cut. My relationship ended. I found out I wasn't getting my job back, that I had been on EI that winter, and I wasn't getting my job back in the spring. And like some of my best friends at the time were kind of like weird towards the relationship I was in. And like, it just was like a weird time, and I was like, fuck it. Like, I know that every major city in Canada hires roughly every 2 years for fire. So I was like, damn, am I gonna like wait around for 2 more years? I just got out of this like long-term relationship. Fucking, you know, like everyone's kind of pissing me off right now. I love Calgary.
Yeah.
I loved everyone I met out here. Evan Shaw, the list goes down. Braden, Cody, Derek, Jay, Jess. God, I'm missing so many people. Like everybody I met out here in 2013 was kind of messaging me being like, oh, like, stoked to see you this summer. Like, this is hardcore or something, because like we used to travel to shows all the time. And I was like, damn, like I missed the mountains, like I missed Calgary. I just loved it here. Why not go try out for their city, move to Calgary, and like try to, you know, maybe establish myself in Western Canada long term? And I did. So I applied to some jobs out here. It's just construction jobs. I just wanted something to get started out here. And basically, it was May long weekend. I got a phone call Thursday afternoon with the time change, the 2 hour difference. It was like almost 5 p.m. in Ottawa. And they were like, hey, can you start work? Like, can you be in for an interview like tomorrow? And I was like, no, I can't. I live in Ottawa. And the guy recognized, like, at the time, I kind of was like talking funny or whatever. And he's like, are you from the East Coast? And I was just like, yeah. He's like, me too. And I was like, and this is like the manager of the company. Anyway, he was just like, be here Tuesday for work. And I was like, oh God, it's Thursday afternoon. I live in Ottawa, and he wants me to work on Tuesday. So that night I packed up all my shit. Thursday morning I did some shit I had to do, like close some accounts or whatever, and basically moved to Calgary that day.
Wow.
Like literally within 24 hours I was in my car driving out here by myself with my dog, Douglas.
And he probably like said that like, well, either this kid is gonna do that or he won't. And
no, I'm like,
just click.
I've always been one of those people that like, if I say I'm gonna do something, I'm gonna do it.
Yeah.
And it's not it's not a joke. I don't fuck around. So like, I basically got out here. I started working right away. And surprised everybody I was friends with out here too, because I made this like Instagram post being like, it's been real Ottawa. I think I lived in Ottawa for 7 years, and I was like, you know, like, love everybody out here. And a lot of the Calgary kids kind of had a feeling that I was coming this way. Like, where are you going? And for whatever reason, I was just like, oh, I'm moving to Nashville. I just told them I was moving to Tennessee for some reason. Some of them fucking believed it. Yeah, some of them fucking believed it. I made no like Instagram post or anything coming across Canada. Showed up in Calgary, and I surprised the fuck out of everybody. And I was like, I live here now, and everyone was like, holy fuck. So
that's crazy. And you are a Calgary advocate through and through.
Yeah. So it just kind of transitioned from Ottawa to Calgary, and like I still people ask, like, to this day, like, I represent Ottawa to this day. Like, I listen to every band that comes out of there. There's so many young kids coming out of Ottawa, and I'm still so close with everybody out there. And a lot of them have come out here to Wild Rose, or, like, you know, like we had the Sedition boys out here last year. Like, Narroway's been out here a few times.
Alex
like Steve
moved here.
Alex just moved
Your
here. Your
brother moved here.
Polish Lex, my brother. So, like, there's been a huge influx of, like, Ottawa kids now coming this way. And I don't want to, you know, like, you know, boast myself and be like, oh, well. But, yeah, like, there's now so many kids that come out here, travel for the fest, and there's just now this Ottawa-Calgary connection, which is so cool because it's such a huge gap. We have this, like, Western Canada thing going on, but now there's, like, a city way the fuck over here now has this, like, connection with us too, and
that's very cool.
I'm really proud of that. So
so to just be sensitive of our time and, you know, wanting to make sure that we hit this point. So we're gonna fast forward a little bit. And get to the Inclination Evan Shaw Memorial set. So that
crazy.
like so to give you a little insight from our end, it's for sure in like the top 5 sets, like view wise, that we've ever done.
That's so fucked up.
And and I think it's interesting because it is one of the most unique sets, because out of all the Inclination sets on the internet, because, you know, there's tons of videos of them playing like LDB Fest where people are going crazy, and then there's one where like I'm getting comments regarding you, like, is this a new singer in the band?
I got so that was pretty fun.
So at least from my, like, if anyone hasn't watched that, so essentially Inclination was gonna fly up, as that was a band that Evan wanted to play his memorial show that he was planning while he was still alive. And at the time, their singer had like busted his knee or foot or something. I think it was
an ACL injury, skateboarding.
So it was like, well, we'd love to do it, but we don't have a vocalist. And Calgary, like, this isn't the first time that I've seen Calgary just absolutely step up and just fill the gaps as far as band members or vocals are concerned. So I'm curious on how you were approached, and, you know, it was not just you filling the gap. Like, Anthony and
Cody helped out. I sang about half the set. I know Cody had a song or two, and I think Anthony kind of sang the other half of the set. But you know, it's not like you said, it's not the first time it's happened in Calgary. Expire played shows out here a while ago, and a lot of us out here are actually really good friends with them, with Caleb and Josh and some of those guys. And, you know, I'm pretty tight with Caleb. He was the bass player of Expire, bass player of Inclination now. And, you know, we were playing video games a lot before he came up here. And basically when Expire came up, it was a similar circumstance where it was super last minute. And basically day of, we found out that the vocalist and the bass player weren't going to make it. So, there was like a group of like 8 or 9 of us.
That was Expire's like last Canadian
show. We found out there was kids driving out from Winnipeg like 12 hours to come to the show, and they were like finding out like hours before the show that they were gonna have to cancel this. And we were like, nah, you're not gonna cancel. Like, we don't have a lot of shows happen out here. Calgary's like one of the most isolated cities in North America. Truly, like, if you really think about it, the closest major American city to play hardcore shows in is either Boise or Seattle, and that's like roughly 14-hour drive. We're super out here by ourselves. So these bands flying in, we're having issues, and basically we all got together, and I played 2 songs on bass for Expire, and I sang 2 songs for Expire, and there was so many other people involved in that, but it's not the first time. So when Caleb talked to me, he was like, hey, like, Inclination might not be able to play the show, and this was like days before. I think it was like pretty last minute.
Flights are booked.
It's happening. Not to mention, it was a super sensitive show for a lot of people. Like, it was like one of the first times we were all kind of getting together after the funeral for Evan. And, you know, Evan was such an important person in Calgary. He's the sole reason I live here today. And Caleb was like, yo, like, would you want to learn some songs? And I was like, sure. And Anthony came up to me and he's like, yo, we might be doing this. And then Cody was involved too. And we were just like, yeah, fuck it. This is a lot like what happened with Expire a couple years ago. We're not going to like let this show go under, especially because it was so important to all of us.
This is not my first rodeo.
Not my first rodeo. We'll fucking do this. Like, and that was like one of the most nerve-wracking experiences of my life, because not only was it a memorial show for my, you know, like one of my best friends, like a brother of mine, basically. Inclination's like one of my favorite current bands, straight edge or not. Like, I love that band. And so when I found that they were playing in Calgary, I was like super pumped. I was gonna go nuts. And then when I found out I was playing in Inclination for the day, I was like, holy shit! Like,
yeah. So you guys didn't do any jamming or anything before? Nope. It was like just hit the stage.
I think I have a video on my phone somewhere where we literally were in the kitchen. So none of us had got to meet up. They had jam.
Oh, the kitchen of the venue.
The kitchen of the venue.
Yeah.
Literally on a fucking like a little boom box or whatever, and it's like me, Anthony, and Cody all in there, and we don't have amps or anything. So the boys are just like press play on the iPod, and they're all just playing acoustically with the guitars, and then like drumming on the kitchen counter basically, and Anthony and I are trying to learn the lyrics and like sing along to it for the first time live, right?
Right.
We went through the set like a couple times. And then we went up and did it.
Yeah.
And if you go back and watch that tape, here's an embarrassing feature of myself. Anytime you see me go to the kick drum, I'm literally at my phone double checking the lyrics to the next verse, coming back out.
Oh, so sneaky.
People think I'm like going for a drink of water or something. I'm literally like,
fuck hydration.
Okay, yeah, cool.
I need to make sure
I got the lyrics.
Is okay.
And I fucking did it. And I actually didn't forget any lyrics. I was pretty happy with it. But
I was impressed too because so you must have gotten a little bit of an early access to the new material because that was before
I did, yeah.
When Fear Turns to Confidence came out.
And it was kind of funny too because those songs were not really being played yet.
Right.
And so that video actually is one of the I don't think it is the first, but it might be one of the first 2 or 3 videos out where those songs are being played.
Yeah.
And to anybody that doesn't know what the fuck's going on in Calgary and they just search Inclination and they see all these new songs being played with like new vocalists and they're like, what the hell is going on here?
That dude from Jesus Piece and that Serration and who's this other guy?
Who's this fucking crazy fucking guy running around? I got to prove myself that day because I've been trying to start bands in Calgary for a while singing, and not a lot of people out here got to see me on a mic before. And
that was the first time I ever I think I had seen you a couple times like grabbing the mic but rocking it.
Yeah, a lot of people came up to me and they're like, "You gotta start a band, dude." And I was like, "I'm trying, man. It's kind of tough. Everyone's a little older here. Everyone." We're now seeing in Calgary where we have like a huge age demographic, which is awesome because for a minute there, the average age at like a Calgary show was like 28, early 30s. And now we've got all these young guys coming in and all these teenagers. And so shout out Set Straight, shout out, Endgame, not so much the young guys, but anymore. Wolfgang used to be like the young guy here for the longest time.
Well, I feel like a fucking grandpa in that band.
Right? Exactly. So like Set Straight, I think is like probably the best example of like the young kids. I don't even know half their names, but I feel like an assoll for that. Shout out Set Straight, Calgary.
Set Straight. Bitter is a newer band that's coming through. I'm trying to think if there's any other. Sorry if I'm forgetting.
No, like there's a lot.
Set Straight was the one I was like, yo, like this is huge.
When I was 16 playing in bands, we didn't sound anything like that. Like back to the First Think Twice demo, Set Straight is blowing everybody out of the water right now. Where everybody's super impressed with the young kids coming up in Calgary now, and it's so good to see that
100%.
too. Yeah. So hopefully everything goes well with Wild Rose. I think if they play, they'll get a really good reaction. Yeah. Knock on wood that this fucking coronavirus doesn't fuck everything up. Cause it's getting a little weird.
Yeah. That's I don't want to go down that path.
No, me neither.
But we're kind of getting at that. Wait, I did want to say with the Inclination, have you talked to any of those guys about that set? Like, I'm curious if they're like, yeah, that was great, man.
Thanks, peace. No, I keep in contact with Caleb probably the most. Like we play video games quite a bit. Shout out Apex Legends, Xbox Live. Hit me up, Evan X Edge X. I made it when I was 15.
Evan X Edge X.
Straight edge as fuck. Still 12 years. No,
dang.
Super close with those guys. With Caleb in particular, but it was a really, really cool experience playing with Inclination under the circumstances. And fuck, man, if another band, something similar happens, you guys can ask me. I don't mind going into those pressure situations and doing that stuff because it's not the first time, and I'm sure it won't be the last to live in a city like this.
I think like some of the stories that you've shared kind of just showcase like, going to shows like is one thing, playing in bands is another, but having the tactical like mindset to just make shit happen. Yeah. For, if a band's members can't get across the border, like
don't give up.
Don't give up.
Keep trying. There could be someone else out there. And it's actually super funny because about 3 weeks ago, I was at a jiu-jitsu competition. So this is like combat sport I compete in, and I was out in Black Falls, Alberta, which is like west of Red Deer. Like we're way out there.
Oh, okay.
And I'm in the locker room after I competed. I just took a shower. I'm super like beat up, like red in the face, and this dude's like looking at me, right? And I was like, the fuck? Like, I'm in the change room, like, naked, right? And this guy keeps staring at me. And I just kind of, like, look at him to, like, acknowledge that I see him looking at me.
Right.
And he just goes, hey, man, super weird question. Do you play in a band called Inclination? And I was just
no fucking way.
I was like, who the fuck are you, dude?
That's hilarious.
So shout out Brett from fucking Edmonton, the Edmonton area. He's like, he's going to come to Wild Rose. He's this jiu-jitsu guy also. We both competed in Black Falls, this super small town.
That is so funny.
And he comes up to me being like, oh, you're the guy that's in an Inclination, right? And I'm like, dude, I'm not in Inclination. I just filled
Let's set it straight
up. Yeah. This dude just approaches me like we're naked in the locker room, and I'm just like, we're in some small town in Alberta, and he's like, you're that guy in Inclination. He's like, I was at that show, and I was like, what the fuck?
That's crazy.
So
that's a
hardcore
story.
is a small world, man. It's
100%.
You're gonna meet people all over the world. I know I can comfortably say I know people all across Canada, all across America, even in Europe now.
Yeah,
it's
one of my favorite things.
I was in Ukraine two years ago, and I hung out with a girl that I was just friends with off of Instagram, and we went for a walk around the city in Kiev, Ukraine. So shout out to all the Russians out there, all the Ukrainian people. Like hardcore is worldwide, man. Same thing with Australia. Like I've traveled so much now, and I've met people almost everywhere I go that have similar interests and similar mindset. Just through listening to hardcore music, and it doesn't matter where you are. You could be in Australia, Russia, whatever. You're gonna meet people, and it's been with me for 12, 13 years now, and I'm sure it'll always be with me. And it's like meeting someone
that's unreal,
naked in a fucking locker room in Black Falls, Alberta. Like it's gonna happen. So
it's gonna happen.
Fuck.
That's sweet. Well, that we're kind of getting close to time. Yeah. So just to wrap up, I always like to ask any guest that comes on just like a favorite like mosh story, and I'm sure that you could either
favorite
pitch something
mosh story,
and it can be like something that happened to you, or like you just heard it from someone. It doesn't need to be
I'll go into a couple injuries because I've been beat up a few times. Everyone doesn't, they don't know that too, but
sure.
When I was living in Ottawa one time, I caught a ring in the eye, and I split this eyebrow here. I got 9 stitches in it, and I called my mom up that night.
A
she's
ring?
like, a ring, yeah.
Like not a
ring on a finger, buddy. Just and I just split. Like I remember I looked down, and it was just like a faucet. Like I was bleeding so much. And then a month or two later, we're at Hardfest, and my band Warner at the time had done a weekend run with this band from Massachusetts called Swamps.
Okay.
So Swamps was kind of big at the time from that area. They play this like super unorthodox like hardcore style, kind of like trash talk influenced or whatever. Mm-hmm. But they ended up doing a weekend tour, had a great reaction in Ottawa, came back to play Hardfest a few months later.
Right.
And they're out there, and we're with all my boys like Mitch Plunkett, Joe Howell, Andrew Naraway, and I, all of the Warner guys are up front. And we know this mosh part's coming up. And Andy from Swamps just goes like, shout out Ottawa hardcore, like super hard. And like the four of us just like separate, like 2 of them go that way, Andrew and I go this way. I'm faster, he's a bit bigger than me. I hit the crowd, and I just like push all these people, and I'm like mowing over, and I turn around, and Naraway's fist just comes boof, and like my nose to this day is super fucking crooked. It bleeds all the time. He fucking deviated my septum. I bled for like 12 hours. Wow. And if you watch this video of Swamps playing at Hardfest, it kind of happens off camera, but then I come back like immediately, and I'm bleeding everywhere, and I'm fucking bleeding on the stage, and this girl's like headbanging, and you see her notice the blood, and you see her like do this fucking thing, and she runs off. And hardest hit I've ever taken was from Andrew Naraway, right in the fucking nose.
Wow.
Nose still fucked up to this day.
Yeah. Jeez.
Yeah.
Cool.
That's probably a highlight. Another, I guess one more I could say was World War IV. This is hardcore, Philadelphia. The Ottawa-Calgary connection was strong at the time. I'm standing right next to Derek Burns. Literally, we're shoulder to shoulder. Super stoked for this band about to play. Feedback starts coming in, and I make a joke going, I'll see you on the other side, because he's going left, I'm going right. Fucking band goes, yo, what's up, we're World War IV. Like, I take one step, you're the fucking guy, just suckers me right in the fucking nose. Boom, explodes. I'm like down, blood everywhere. Fuck. I remember looking back, seeing Derek being like, where the fuck did Evan go? I run to the bathroom, like literally they're playing their intro. I shove a bunch of fucking tissues up my nose. I'm bleeding like crazy because this was a post Andrew Narroway punch. Like my nose now just is all fucked up.
Now it's so fragile.
Yeah, I love that intro, and that intro has like this like 40-second build up, and then it goes into this really slow time change thing or whatever. And in the video, this is like Hate 56, shout out Hate 56, World War IV, this is hardcore. I'm on the stage doing a stage dive before the fucking end of that set, before the end of that intro, and I'm like, you can see tissues up my nose. And that was like literally 40 seconds. I just got busted
like
up. Like
someone escaped the hospital, dude, just to mosh for that intro.
I love violence. I love violence at hardcore shows. You know, it's something I've always been drawn to. And it's partly how I am the way I am and the way I dance, and it's never personal. But this motherfucker looked me square in the fucking eye. I took one step, and this dude just goes, boom, like square. Like it wasn't a mod. Like he just crossed me right in the fucking face. So that'll stay with me too.
Yeah. Well, man, there's a bunch of little clips that you mentioned that I'm personally going to go and check out.
Oh man, so many videos. I think it's important to document this stuff because you can be older and look back on videos when you were fucking 15, 16, 18 years old and being like, yeah, here's when my friend broke my nose and laugh about it and stuff. And
yeah, I got to keep the cameras rolling.
I think it's so important what you guys are doing too. So shout out Scoped and shout out all the guys and girls that work hard in Calgary and Western Canada.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you.
Going strong out here. So.
Yeah. And super, super proud to be a part of this community. And I felt like, you know, moving out here, it's like, I've always told people Calgary is like filled with like-minded people who are just passionate about making hardcore just a spot to travel to, like honestly a spot to move to. I've met loads of people who have moved here just for hardcore.
You got the mountain, you got the
mountains are sick.
One of the best cities in Canada, if not the best.
Yeah.
Great people, great nature, great city, great food.
Calgary.
I love Calgary, man. I'm an advocate. I was the same in Ottawa. Whenever people come here, I'm going to show them around. I'm going to show them why I moved here.
Yeah.
5 years now here in Calgary, and I absolutely love it. I love Western Canada. So yeah, it's the best.
Sweet. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show and, you know, saying some good stories and
a lot of stories, a lot of places.
No, but
a lot of injuries.
You know, but I think like the context is really important. That I've learned a lot about you and you know how you do certain things. So yeah, I hope you had a blast.
Fuck yeah! Shout out Scope. Shout out Calgary. Wild Rose.
How can people keep up with you if you're gonna start a band or just want to see pictures
I've been working
of your dog?
on it. Obviously I'm on social media. You can look me up, Evan X MacIsaac, MacIsaac. I've been trying to get a band. There's actually something in the works right now. I'm not even going to mention it, but there could be a fusion of some bands happening here pretty soon, and I might get on a mic here. So
very cool. Well, thanks again for coming on.
Check.
And thanks for listening.
Cool. Bye, guys.